Welcome to an Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I'm your host, Terrence Franklin. In each episode, we go on an odyssey to discover my family history, and I invite guests to share their stories to bend the arc of history with their own legacy. You can find the show through YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now please, join me for an Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I'm your host, Terry Franklin. Welcome to our show. I'm so happy that you guys are here because today we're talking about something that's very important to me, which is legacy, what we get from those who came before us, my ancestors over my shoulder, and what we leave to those who come after us. And an important, essential part of that is estate planning. And today we have with us a very special guest, Charlene Usher, the head of the Usher Law Group. I've known Charlene for a number of years and know her to be a qualified, highly effective professional, well-known in the community. Charlene, why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice, and then I'd like to get into a little bit about why it's so important that people have estate planning.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join you, Terry. It's really great to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics as well. And as you know, our firm does estate planning. We also do probate, and we also do business succession planning. So we've been Usher Law Group for about 20 years, and now we are ULG Law APC, which is a professional corporation, just because we're taking on new areas like the business succession planning. So what we do is we try to focus on helping people put their affairs in order in a way that allows them to make all the decisions about who's going to be in charge of things if they become incapacitated, and then ultimately when they pass away or transition, as opposed to them having what I call the default plan. I always tell people everyone has an estate plan. They may not know what it is, but their estate has a plan for what happens to them and what happens to their assets if they don't put their own plan in place. So we're passionate about helping people understand first, what is your default plan? What will happen if something happened to you tomorrow? Because none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know our expiration date or when some incident's going to occur, but we do have people that we care about, and we have things that we have amassed after years of hard work, maintenance, paying taxes, improving, insuring, all these things for decades, and for it just to kind of disappear into the stratosphere in some mysterious way. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be a way that helps our family members avoid unnecessary court costs and conflict. So that's what we're all about at our firm.
And thank you for correcting me on the new firm name. You rebranded with these broader capacities. I think that's really fantastic. Excited for that. As you know, we do trust and estate litigation. So we see those situations where things have gone wrong. And so people are coming to us to try to deal with a problem. And hopefully people are coming to people like you in advance for estate planning to get it done right. Tell me a little bit about probate and why it is that you would want to make sure that your property doesn't pass by probate. What is probate in the first place?
Well, every state has its own probate laws. I'm going to speak to California because that's where I'm licensed. And in fact, our firm handles probate and estate planning matters in every county in California, from Yolo County way up north all the way to San Diego County. And probate is not the most fun thing for the client in particular, which is usually the family of the person who passed away. So someone has died and now they've left assets. Their assets have to meet a certain qualifying level, which currently is $188,250. I like to just say 200,000 because it's a round number. If the value of your assets exceed that qualifying number and you have not attached those assets to a trust or some other way devised it that it can pass without probate, then that estate will have to go through a probate process, which typically in California, if we're lucky, that matter will take 2 years from start to finish, meaning we start a probate matter in court, and before we can get an order that says what can be distributed to the legal heirs, we have to go through a whole process, and that's going to take all this time. In some counties, it could be an additional year. So we have the public nature of probate, meaning once you file a petition, anyone can go online and look up your probate petition, find out who your relatives are, what your assets were, where did you bank, all these things, addresses are exposed. So that's very public. Then you leave this chance for conflict to happen, because since you did not document what you wanted to have happen, different interpretations from different people about what was supposed to happen. So we have to go through those battles sometimes. And then we have extreme costs, which I would typically say that the comparison between the cost of a probate typically and the cost of estate planning is like 1 to 4. Like you probably will pay about 25% of what the cost of an actual probate will be to your family if you just did estate planning and you did proper estate planning. So when I look at it, people kind of have this attitude of, well, it's not going to matter. I'm not going to be here. It's going to take care of itself. Well, it will take care of itself, but probably not in a way that you would want. And I find in a lot of cases in probate, what will happen is the legal team, the law firm, the lawyer almost becomes an heir of people's estate. To the extent that they may take more in fees than any individual heir. So before your children or your grandchildren or other loved ones can receive anything from your estate, those costs of administering that probate have to happen first, and then creditors, and then what's left over, if there is anything, that's what goes to your legal heirs. So those are some of the reasons why people would like to avoid probate. I don't know if you want me to talk about how we find people ending up in probate.
Yeah, maybe there's a few examples of those situations where things didn't quite go the way people planned, so they end up in probate instead of getting a more efficient handling of their estate.
Well, I usually see that in 4 typical scenarios. So the first one, of course, is the person didn't do anything. They passed away. They did not have a will. They did not have a trust. They just assumed that they had time, or somehow it was just going to automatically go to whoever they thought it was going to go to. That's one way we end up in probate. Another way we end up in probate is someone tries to do it themselves. So they go online, they find some documents online, something that tells them, okay, do this, do that, but they don't get any advice, any counsel from someone who does this every day, who sees what happens when you don't dot the I's, cross the T's, make the right decisions. And sometimes they create situations that are worse than if they had done nothing. So do it yourself is one. Another one is a person actually had a trust established, but they never attached their assets to their trust. So they did not fund their trust. And so
Happens a lot.
About in the trust, it won't matter if you never attach those assets to the trust, because those instructions will not apply to those assets. And then the last one is when a person has established a trust, but nobody can find it. So we sometimes find where people will come to us and say, can you look up our parents' trust? They passed away and we know they had one, but we can't find it. And the truth is there's no government agency that houses people's trusts. If there's no way to get to at least a copy of it, we are out of luck. We're now having to treat that like that was a person that died with no documents, because we can't make it up at that point. We know that there are properties in a trust because a title is held in the name of a trustee of a trust. But without that actual trust, or at least a copy of it, we are back to probate.
I know how that happens. It feels so sad. People come in, they say, oh, I know they did a trust. It's got to be recorded somewhere. I'm like, no, it's not recorded anywhere. And you're lucky if you can even find the lawyer who prepared it, because a lot of times the documents don't even indicate the name of the lawyer who prepared the document. So you're sort of tracking back. So planning in advance is what you're telling us we need to do to make sure that we avoid those kind of situations. Well, I know that there's stuff that we could talk about in terms of concerns about incapacity, because I know that happens much more frequently than people think. But today I just wanted to sort of wrap it up and give you a chance to tell us what you're doing, either in your practice or in your daily life, that helps bend the arc of history towards justice.
Well, 2 things, and thank you for asking me that question. First of all, I feel that this practice area that I have stumbled upon and I am passionate about In this area, I work with clients, but I'm really working on behalf of the people that they care about, their causes that they care about, things that are important to them, or they want to leave a legacy beyond their natural life. So beyond them physically being here, they are still here. And so that makes a difference. I feel that as I've gotten to know this practice area over the last 15 plus years, I've found through just speaking with my colleagues and people in the industry that for decades, people were either given no advice, particularly communities of color, where they just didn't have assets, so they weren't thinking about these kind of things. And then they got some assets. Grandma bought something for 20-something thousand, now worth $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, and the estate costs are super high. Well, people have been given false advice. Like I had a colleague tell me that when he first started 20 years ago, one of his mentors, quote, advised him to offer to do free wills for people who had real property. If you
What?
pass away with real property in California, and it's more than likely going to meet that threshold level for probate, it's definitely going to have to go through probate. So to me, that was a completely immoral, almost illegal way of giving advice to someone. It's one thing for you to advise them, this is the way you can avoid probate and a trust would be recommended, and they choose not to do it. But to be offered it, only to be offered the one alternative that will definitely put their family in probate, that will make that attorney rich, which is exactly what that mentor said. If you do this, if you offer these free bills, you just keep living, and ultimately you're going to do very well. So making sure that people are educated about their options and making sure that they know there's a way they can leave a legacy and they can have some confidence and understanding how that process works. That's one thing that I'm involved in. And then I'm also involved in the pipeline process, meaning the pipeline of future attorneys of color, of future women attorneys who can be on the bench at some point. They can practice and be amongst my colleagues even after I retire. And then they can be the people who are on the bench who make decisions about things, and also the people who make laws. So if there's all this things that prevent people from going to law school or going to college because people don't think they can do it, maybe no one in their family has been to college or to law school, then they're not even going to apply. And of course, the cost has gotten to be prohibitive. I don't know if I would go to law school today if someone said $100,000 or more, and there's no guarantee you'll be able to pay this back, and no one's going to pay that for you. I might think twice about that career choice. But there are some programs that I'm involved with that are reaching out to potential students who would be great in this field, in this profession, and mentoring them and connecting them to resources so they don't have to get into so much debt. I'm involved in some of those because I think that would make the world a more just place if we have more diversity in all those areas in the future.
That's great. I care a lot about these pipeline issues too, and try and work on things, especially encouraging people from our communities who think being a lawyer means going to court. For me, that's true, but it means so much more. And so part of that is really letting people know early on and disabusing people of so many of those mistaken impressions that are based on, so-and-so said this might happen with my estate. You really put your finger on that. So, I think we all need to work on that. I would love to get your resources on that. We'll include those in the show notes so that people can, support the organizations and the entities that you're involved in to help move us in a direction where young people understand the benefits of possibly being a lawyer, or at least considering all the elements instead of, going into it without any information.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for being here and for being my guest and for being my friend and for being my referral source, because I do, when I get good cases, I send them to you. So thank you so much, Charlene. It's really been a pleasure, and thank you for taking the time and dealing with some of our little glitchy stuff before everybody tuned in.
No problem. Have a great day, Terry.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for tuning in to an Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I've been your host, Terrence Franklin. You can find this show through YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.